Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Project Egg Show. Today, we have the honor of speaking with Ryan White, a seven-figure digital entrepreneur, influencer, investor, press contributor, and speaker. Ryan's founded the globally recognized social media marketing company Social Revelation, kick-ass name, by the way, which helps business and personal brands increase their digital footprint and brand awareness online. In addition, Ryan has about 500,000 people in his online network from all over the world, been featured in tons of different podcasts like Entrepreneurs on Fire, Underdog Empowerment, The Daily Grind, No Excuse Show, Millionaires Hot Seat, and is a contributor to a ton of very impressive media outlets. So without further ado, thank you so much, Ryan, for coming on the show. It is a pleasure to speak with you.
Awesome, Ben. That was a great intro. I hope I can deliver as much value as you just kind of teed this thing up for, but man, I'm stoked to be here and I'm ready to drop some value to your audience base.
All right, man, let's jump right in. What is your story?
For sure. So my story, again, I'm from small town, Georgia. A lot of people don't know this, but it's called Lakeland, Georgia. And it's a town of about 3,300 people. And, you know, the average median income of this particular town is about $30,000 a year. So it kind of all started with, I grew up in the baseball world, right? So my dad was my Little League coach all the way through my high school baseball coach. So I did that for a large majority of my life. A lot of people kind of around the Southeast kind of know me from the baseball kind of background. And so when I got done playing high school ball, I actually, graduated from Lanier County High School, moved on to Carson-Newman University on a baseball scholarship, and, basically graduated from there with a bachelor's in accounting, which, by the way, absolutely hated. So, I did a few internships. This is not a knock on any of the accountants out there. If you love your job, that's the most important thing. But for me, the passion just wasn't there. And so after I graduated, so to kind of give you a timeline, I graduated from high school in 2008, and I was at Carson-Newman University from 2008 till 2012. And then 2013, I actually transitioned from the state of Tennessee, because Carson-Newman University is located in Jefferson City, Tennessee. So I moved back to the state of Georgia, kind of moved back in with my family to figure out what I wanted to do. What was the next steps? Because accounting just wasn't doing it for me. And I got to the point where I was actually working at Tennessee State Bank, and I just wasn't happy there. So I said, you know what, I need to move back home, kind of figure out what it is I want to do, get a little direction. At this point, I'm 22 years old. And it was in that moment where I got introduced back into the baseball world. Okay, so I basically had an opportunity to get back into private instruction and coaching. And so from 2013 to 2017, that's what I was doing. So I was, training kids from 16 different states. And, I was actually working as a coach for a top 3 travel organization in the country. And 2017, March of 2017, if we're being specific, I actually kind of launched Social Revelation kind of as a little side hobby. And then, 2018 was actually the first full fiscal year of Social Revelation. So if you want to talk about, the scaling, a lot of my interviews are like, man, if you launched March 2017 and, you got 600 clients now and running a 7-figure business, that was a fast upward trend. And so, yeah, man, super blessed, to be able to be in this industry, to have done as well as I have in as little time as I have. And so that was super cool. And I try to give back as much as possible, man. But that in a nutshell, that's the story of me. So yeah.
Let's jump back into your early years.
Okay.
What did your childhood smell like?
So again, it was a lot of going, being kind of back in the baseball world. It was a lot of on the travel, right? We're always on the go. A lot of people that knew us were like, dude, y'all are never in town, So I come from a small town. And again, my dad, he played a little college ball, a little semi-pro ball. So it was very much, every weekend where school wasn't in or any summer, we were on the road traveling as a family doing something with baseball. I mean, that was literally our whole life. And so everyone always thought, if Ryan doesn't play in the MLB, which obviously that wasn't my plan, my story, but they were like, he'll get involved into something with baseball. And so naturally, a lot of people thought when I was back into baseball doing private instruction and stuff, they're like, he'll retire in that. That's his calling. And it was, it was my first love, my first passion. And so it's kind of crazy because, and I'm sure we'll kind of touch on this later, but did I always think that I was going to own a social media marketing company? The answer to that question is no. It kind of fell into my lap. And so But early home life was, go to school, get out of school, go to practice, and any time that we had a game, we were on the road traveling somewhere to play a game. So that's it.
So I know it's a weird question, but I'm really interested in knowing what did your childhood actually smell like?
What did it smell like? Let me ponder. I don't know that I've been asked that before. Probably a lot like pine straw if I had to pick one thing. And the reason is because, shout out to my mom and my dad, who literally, it seemed like every other day I was out, because living in Georgia, there's a lot of pine trees. So we happened to have a lot of these pine trees that were right above our driveway, and it seemed like every day I had to be outside blowing off the pine straw. So honestly, if I had to coin, first thing that comes to mind would be pine straw.
What was your relationship like with your parents at that young age?
Really good, really really good. Really close with my mom and my dad. So both my parents, they split after 28 years of marriage. So now they're both remarried. And so happily remarried. But, in the early stages of us kind of being a unit as we traveled around, I think it gets tougher on couples, as the kids kind of get out of the house. You hear that a lot of times, and, we're not getting into a relationship therapy session, but I feel like, when the family's intact and you're doing things together and everyone's got the same common interests, a lot of love going on. And that was what I remember growing up, honestly, man. It was a loving household. I was close with my mother and my father. They would do anything for me. They did do anything for me. I was a kid who, both my parents were educators. So, when you think in the world of educators, we know they're the most underpaid, people in America. But, in the small town that I lived in, my dad was the athletic director and the baseball coach. And so, my mom, she had her specialist, her 6-year degree. So in terms of that whole, in the educational field, it's all what you make is kind of directly correlated to years experience and how many degrees do you have, right? So education. And so my parents made good money in education, but we know now, like kind of being grown up, I'm like, well, we were by no means wealthy, right? We lived a lot on credit cards growing up, to make ends meet. And, every kid, because I'm the middle child of 2 brothers, which it's a little bit different. We were kind of out of the house because there's an 8-year difference between myself and my younger brother. But me and my older brother, he was a senior, I was a freshman. So we had 2, pretty much brand new vehicles in the driveway, plus my parents' 2 vehicles. So they were paying 4 car payments. And so, the perception is what I'm getting at is that we were always the rich family in our community, right? And it was just funny at school. They were like, oh, you're the rich kid. You always get everything you want. But in hindsight, I look back and I'm like, what are you talking about? But if that gives you any indication as the type of society or community that I grew up in, to go and have a combined household income of around combined $100,000 a year, you were considered wealthy in that area. And so but to give you a little insight into kind of what financially it looked like for me, that was it. Both my parents were educators. So
What was the dynamic of values in your home? Like, what were those things that were stressed? Like, this is important, that's important, this is definitely to be avoided. What were some of those values that were really important?
right. So anytime we talk about values, I have to say I was raised in a Christian family, Baptist family. I'm still a Christian, firm believer. People that follow me know that about myself. And every Sunday, or as many Sundays as possible, my wife and I are here at Passion City Church in Atlanta, Georgia, if you don't know where I'm from. But, we still, believe in the values that were kind of taught to me growing up. And, the cool part about that is, anything that goes with kind of the Christian faith, obviously you had to be honest, you weren't supposed to run around stealing from people. You definitely couldn't kill anybody, but it was a lot of the biblical traditional beliefs and backgrounds. And then, as far as just being a people person, my mom honestly is like the nicest human being on planet Earth. I'm convinced. And, she was stressed how important reputation was. Once you tarnish your reputation, it's something that you can't get back. And then first impressions are huge. When you meet someone, shake their hand, as my father taught me, look them dead in the eye. You only get one first impression for people. And so it was just a lot of this. Now looking back, I can see how it's kind of correlated into the business world. But even so, it's just crazy how similar my wife and I are, and the families we come back are that we were raised by, because, even my wife's mother, she's just started her own ministry, and she does that through the digital space and through social media. And matter of fact, my company kind of helps her with that stuff as well. But her father was also an entrepreneur. Go figure, right? How, you hear that women always go after men who kind of resemble their fathers, and, guys tend to do the same thing. And genuinely, my wife is a direct kind of resemblance of my mother, which is a huge compliment in my opinion. And she would say the same thing. She's like, you have so much similarity with my father. And he taught her, like, I guarantee you, when you meet my wife and she shakes your hand, I guarantee you're going to say, wow, that's because I hear it all the time. They're like, man, your girl's got a handshake on her. Because again, she was taught, she is although she's 5 foot tall and weighs like 110 pounds, which I'm still trying to figure out. She looks like she weighs 70 pounds, but when she shakes your hand, you know it. You know that she's there. You know what I mean? And so again, that's how she was raised, and she does that as well.
Living in a town, I believe you said there were 3,300 people in your town. How do you think that contributed to your identity of self growing up and your mindset?
I think it a couple of different things. I think it helped me, get to know people on a more personal level, because again, when you're in a community that small, it's not just like if you live in, say, LA, you don't get to know but a certain select few of people on a real personal level. Whereas, I feel like there is it's bittersweet to live in a small town. People always talk about the small town drama because everyone knows everyone. But I never saw that as really a con. I saw that as a pro, because, realistically, if you go look at my high school graduating class and randomly pick one person, I guarantee you I could tell you at least one thing about them. Well, where they lived, or either, what they did for a living, what their parents did for a living, what were their grades in school, what sports clubs did they attend, what kind of activities outside of school were they involved in. And to me, that was always a cool thing, because it kind of taught me people skills, and, going back to, the values, like you said, my mother was just always be kind to people, not even, I once heard something, because you hear the golden rule, treat people how they want to be treated. But to go a step further, I heard something the other day that if you want to truly be successful, don't even treat people how you want to be treated. Treat people genuinely how they want to be treated. Because, sometimes we don't take a step back and really analyze how is it that I want to be treated. And so it's like, you know what? No, I need to treat Ben the way that Ben wants to be treated, because that's a totally different dynamic than potentially how I would want to be treated. So just kind of running around with that mindset, again, people, hanging out with people. And when you do that, I was friends with people from different backgrounds. So because I was exposed to it. Does that make sense? So in a big area like LA, you're going to run with if you're a baseball player, and it happens a lot in college, but you're running with the baseball team. And everything you do kind of is affiliated with the baseball club. Whereas me coming from a small town, dude, I had friends who, were a part of the chess club, part of the math club, part of the beta club, in the band, on the baseball team, on the football team. And so I tried to be involved in as many people's lives as I could, and be more understanding than anything. And I feel like now in business, it helps you become more cultured.
I was about to ask that. What were some of those either values or beliefs or things that you hold, your truths, that really led to your success in the business world?
I think for me, consistency obviously is key, but at the same time, I think competitive nature. I've heard you ask, listening to some of your previous interviews, how much does the competitive sporting nature play into the business and career path? I mean, I think it's crazy to say that it didn't 100% contribute, because the reality is, if you're competitive growing up playing sports and you become an entrepreneur, that is directly going to correlate with how efficient and effective you are in going out and competing with other people in your industry on that top position. Or as Grant Cardone says, because people that follow me know I'm a Grant Cardone advocate, or not competing and dominating the industry, right? Because he's like, who wants competition? Nobody wants competition. You want to dominate the space. And so, again, it's just having that, that kind of knockout punch attitude to where, I'm going to be the best in this industry. And there is no competition, because there's just no way you can compete with this, basically the service value that I provide to my clients at the level that I can provide it. And so, I feel like that's played a huge part into especially kind of some of the tactics that I use even in my business today.
Why do you think you're so competitive?
I think again it goes back to being a coach's son. As you can tell, I mean, if you met my father, you would understand immediately. It would take you about that long to figure it out, but he always held me to a higher standard than anyone else on the team. He coached me literally. My youngest, if I was 4 years old in t-ball, he coached that team all the way through literally high school, and so I just remember he taught me very early on to be a leader. He was like, hey, because here's the reality. When other kids had a bad day, they jumped in the car with their parents and they went home. But when I had a bad day, I jumped in the car with my father and I had to listen to it all night, and probably the next couple of days until I got back on the field and had a great game. You know what I mean? And so he was tough on me. He was hard on me. But, at my wedding, I wrote him a personalized letter basically thanking him for all that stuff because I genuinely feel like he's turned me into the man I am today that's now running a 7-figure business and, made me the first millionaire, if you will, with the last name White in our family, which is super cool. I feel like 100% he contributed to that. And if I wouldn't have been raised the way that I was, from him, that never would have taken place. And so 100% being a coach's son. He even taught me like not to be the best kid in my town because a lot of times complacency is a huge thing when you're a big fish in a small pond. It's very easy to look around and go, because I was that kid. I'm the best player on the field at any given time. Why do I need to go do extra reps when I get home? And he helped me see the larger picture as travel ball started to get bigger. He's like, hey son, you don't need to be the best player in this town or these surrounding counties. You don't only need to be the best player in the state because there's 50 of them. He started to open my eyes, right? He kind of started to bring that tunnel vision and make it a little bit more wider parameter for me. And so again, I attribute a lot of that to him.
It seems like you have a lot of respect and admiration for your dad for really helping to show you that path. What was it like for you to go from an athlete, you're playing baseball your whole life, and then to really evolve into more of a businessman? Like, how did you make that transition? And I'm really interested from the perspective of your self-identity, your self-worth.
For sure. And that's a great question. And I'll kind of break this down because I feel like a lot of times, coming from a small town, being successful in baseball to, I go back to, the 10-year reunion and people were like, man, now you're running a 7-figure business. It just seems people only see the peak of the iceberg. You always see that photo, right, where people don't really see what's underneath the water, the cliche photo that everyone's seen. But the reality is a lot of people genuinely don't see that stuff. They never saw the lows for me, but I was like anyone else. My life hasn't always been an upward trend. And I'm sure you could say the same thing. But, when I graduated, from college and realized baseball was over and I had an accounting degree, which, I'm 21, 22 years old and I'm owed $50,000 in student loan because Carson University is a private school. Um, again, I went, my first job was actually working as a bank teller at Tennessee State Bank, and I was making $11 an hour. And I remember, dude, I was clocking in, running the drive-through at like 7:30 in the morning, and I wasn't able to leave, till 5 o'clock. I was told when to go to work, when I could take lunch break, when I could go to the restroom, when I had to be back, how many vacation days a year I got, when I could go home, and I always knew at an early age, like from 10 years old, being competitive and just having that drive that I would always, I had a standard early that I would be a 6-figure earner. Because to me, in our society, that was like the key. That was the threshold for being successful. And so I was like, I'm going to own my own business one day and I'm going to make 6 figures. I don't know how, but I knew that at a very young age. And so, now here I am, fast forward, baseball's over. So that was a huge part of my life. And I'm working a job that I don't like, making $11 an hour. I'm being told how to live my life. And at this point, I was still in Tennessee, so I was 400 miles away from home. And dude, I was in a dark place, super depressed. And it was conversations on the phone with my mother. That was when she was like, we got to get you out of Tennessee, get you back to Georgia. So I actually moved back in with my parents, 21, 22 years old, which was a tough pill to swallow, as you can imagine, because I was kind of self-sufficient for 5 years while I was living away. And it was there where I got the opportunity to move back into the baseball. So now, because when I got back home, I was deciding to become, the only thing I knew was I was like, you know what, I may go into education, become a coach, just like my father, just like my parents. That was what I was going to do. I was actually training to go get my master's in education and do that. So fun fact, I'm actually certified to teach high school and middle school mathematics in the state of Georgia. But you know, my path was directed by a friend of mine into this other direction. And so I got back in to baseball instruction, and it was there that, you know, because I never saw myself as a salesman. I'd never sold anything a day in my life. But because I was passionate and I was like, this has to work, you know, because baseball has to work for me. This is my end, if you will, you know, back into the sport. You know, again, as an instructor, you have to go sell yourselves to parents as to why they want to bring their kid to you. So I learned networking skills. I learned how to sell myself in those sessions to basically to a parent so that they could go in and justify paying me $45 for a 30-minute session. Okay. And so as I did that for a few years, you know, I got to where I had 40 to 50 kids per week coming in to see me, you know, and I was making $45 to $50 a half hour. Well, again, as you build up clientele, you're selling yourself. And so I learned how to go out and generate leads, generate clients, and sell. And so, and then here's the transition period is, you know, I was the youngest guy in the office for the baseball company. And so they said, we're going to give you our social media marketing. We want to put you in charge of that. Well, again, going back to, you know, little tip on me as an educational side, I was my high school salutatorian, and I graduated college with a 3.95. So all the way through school, I made like 2 Bs through college. And so again, I tend to do well in school. And so I kind of took that same, and the reason was, is if I did anything and I put my mind to do something, I was either not doing it or I'm all in. And so, but when I took this on, I was like, you know what, I'm going to try to do it as best as I can. And I started to generate some great traction and results for this company in social media. So now fast forward into probably, it took, you know, from 2013 to 2017. So 4 years for this to kind of, this process before these ideas of maybe doing it for myself started to manifest. But eventually I got to, if I can do this for this company, why can't I basically replicate those results for myself? And so I said, you know what, let's test it. I'm going to try to start doing this. And that was when I launched it March 2017 on the side, and I started focusing on Ryan White as a personal brand. And, you know, it got to the period where, you know, I was basically able to replicate those same results. You know, I'm growing at Ryan White on Instagram, my personal Instagram, like 10,000 new followers per month, which generated a lot of attention for me. People were reaching out saying, hey, can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? Can you replicate this across various niches? I said, well, I don't know, but I would love to try it. So then I started hustling it. Hey man, give me, you know, $10 a month, $20, $30. And what I would do was I was taking everyone that I had worked with and I was putting them in a Telegram chat group. And every week I would post their gains in there so that everyone could kind of compare to where they were. After about 6 months of doing that, I realized I had 100 clients that I had worked with in this group. And so then I just stepped back and I said, you know what? I love baseball, don't get me wrong, but that's linear income. How long is this shoulder gonna last? And through that process, I met my which was my girlfriend at the time, but I knew very early on she would eventually one day be my wife. So I started thinking long-term, kids. Do I want to be throwing baseballs and training kids when kids are out of school? That's when my kids are out of school. So then I started having basically internal conflict with, I want to be the same father for my kids and be able to coach a little league or softball league or whatever they're involved in the same way my dad did that for me. And so I started thinking more. I think I did an interview and the guy said, you transition your mind in that moment from basically a money mindset to a wealth mindset. So, you know, and so and when I started thinking more time freeing and generating wealth for myself, I was like, I got to get into passive income. I think social media is my way to do that because I can charge monthly recurring subscriptions. So I tested the model, and then I realized like December 2018, the social media marketing, social revelation had basically done as much or actually a little bit more revenue than I did all year with the baseball. And I was basically part-timing that. And baseball was my full-time gig at the time. So January 2018, had a sit down, said, going all in social revelation marketing. And here we are today, basically 2 years later.
When you first started to use those tactics to grow the baseball company, and then you wanted to try to replicate that for your own personal brand. What were those tactics or skills that you brought over that actually worked? Like, what were those tactical things that led to you seeing results?
Right, for sure. I mean, I won't get into anything too proprietary, but still a solid takeaway is, it's not rocket science on how to be successful. I mean, a couple key things is, number one, the first thing I started doing was, I started researching the greats. Who on the platform is already killing it, in the space that I'm in. And so I just started basically observing, watching, recording, documenting some of the things they were doing. And then I said, you know what, how can I put my own special spin on it to make it even better? And so it was basically through research and then studying people who were already sitting in the seat I was trying to sit in that I started kind of noticing some very common things. Like you start to see, these 10 things. It seems like every single influencer who's killing it is doing this. And some of those things are as simple as, like for me, when I started to give you a solid takeaway, it's you got to have your account, and you got to be engaging within your target community. So the first thing is identifying where those people are. Okay. It's kind of like going to, if I go fishing, right, and I go out into the Pacific Ocean, fish are everywhere. So it could take me hours before I figure out where those people are that I'm trying to catch, if you will. Whereas it's like the difference between going out into the ocean versus just going to the fish farm and walking by the ponds where they grow them and I'm just picking them up by my hand. And so for me, I was in the baseball niche at that time. And so accounts like at Major League Baseball, so at MLB, at Bryce Harper, who, if you don't know, is now of Phillies, but was with the Washington Nationals for forever as an outfielder, at Mike Trout. These are all basically MVP caliber players who are young because, at the time, they're relatively around my age. I'm 28 years old. I think Mike Trout's like 26, 27-ish. So it was not only just doing MLB, but going and finding major leaguers who have a huge baseball following similar to my age and my demographic of people. And then I would take my account and I would not interact with Bryce Harper, but interact with the followers of Bryce Harper, followers of Mike Trout, followers of Major League Baseball. Because the whole idea is just from the law of numbers, if I'm consistent with this, I do this daily, and I can provide value to those people. Well, the moment that, out of curiosity, they come back and click on Ryan's page, they've already kind of basically been pre-labeled as there's an interest in baseball there. So I know when they get to my page, they're going to have basically common interest, and they're going to be interested in the type of content that I've been posting, and there's an instant connection, and you tend to have conversions. So that's kind of the way it works, is identifying the people, interacting with those people, and the conversions naturally happen pretty organically, and it's not that hard. It's just in order to figure that out, you have to do some research on your industry and figure out where are the people that I need to connect with. And then it's just putting an action plan behind that, right, into going and actually making that happen. So it was that simple.
So if you'll humor me for a little bit, let's do like a little bit of a live case study, right?
Okay, cool.
How would you do that for the Project Egg show?
So for you, I mean, you need to go out and identify who are the top players already in the podcasting world who may be interested in what you're doing. So, and again, you're not going to get, there's a little bit of trial and error here, the first 30 days. Now, sometimes we do it perfectly and conversions are great, but understand that, as you continue to move forward, trial and error, it's going to get better. So let's just say like a John Lee Dumas, right? With Entrepreneurs on Fire, massive podcast, okay, business podcast. So it would make sense that we could go and basically target Entrepreneurs on Fire or John Lee Dumas, okay, and basically have your account or your podcast interacting with that community, because we already know that those people are interested in listening to podcasts. They probably have an iPhone. They're streaming it on the way to work, or that why else would they be following Entrepreneurs on Fire and John Lee? So, well, you do this not across just John Lee, but across other heavy hitters. So who are the top 10 business podcasts? Do they have an Instagram page? If they do, how big is the community of people that are following them? Because the key to this is you want to go shopping at the largest place that you can. It don't do you any good if you go look at Entrepreneurs on Fire and they only have 10 people, because obviously that's not going to provide you the most bang for your buck. You don't need to invest all your energy there. Now, Entrepreneurs on Fire and John Lee is way bigger than that. I love John. Great guy. If you haven't listened to Entrepreneurs on Fire, it's just as good as Project Egg, I promise you. But, and you could go even a step further. So let's just say you only interview entrepreneurs. So wouldn't it make sense for Project Egg to go interact with the audience base or the followers of the Grant Cardones, the Tony Robbins, the Ed Milet's, the Andy Frisellas? That could be a great conversion for you as well, because as your page basically interacts with them and they click back on Project Egg, immediately they see in your bio if you've done a good job at, basically I say, hey, your bio is your resume. So if you've done a good job on your resume and your bio, you're clear, you're concise, and people know what to expect if they were to follow you. If I was one of those people and you followed me and I went back to your page and I said, wow, here's a business podcast, which when I did, it took me this long to basically, I went to iTunes podcast. I pulled you up. I saw how many reviews you had. I saw if you were a 4-star, 5-star, which you were. I saw how many episodes you were. Immediately, in about 2 seconds, I realized that your podcast is great. Obviously, you're delivering good value or you wouldn't have that much. I can tell you're invested in what you're doing. I'm going to probably follow your podcast and at least check out an episode. And if I like that episode, I'm going to subscribe. And now you have me lifelong. We'll do that on a big enough scale. Project X just scaled to the next 100,000 Instagram followers, in podcasting.
That was awesome. And to everybody who's listening, I would or watching, I would highly encourage you to actually go back and listen to that a couple times, because Ryan seriously just laid out a blueprint for you to follow to massively scale your Instagram. Like, that was sweet. Seriously, go back and listen a couple times. There were some layers there of just hit the mic. There were some layers there of brilliance that I'm not even sure I caught all of it, so I'm going to have to go back and listen to it. But seriously, highly encourage that. So when you said that you want to go find the top dogs, you want to interact with them, right? When you say interact, can you drill down into that a little bit? Like, I know you have a proprietary process and people
for sure.
pay you a lot of money, but
yeah, for sure. I mean, staying as vague as possible. Again, interaction can mean, because here's the reality. We can only do the certain things that Instagram allows us to do. So what are those things? You can follow people, you can DM people, you can like their photos, and you can comment. So the reality is you're doing things to grab attention. Okay. So now here's the reality. You can do that stuff yourself. You can hire someone on your team to do that for you. You can hire a virtual assistant to do that for you. How you go about doing it is 100% up to you. We have a fully built out team, which handles most of our client stuff for us. But in essence, you're just trying to generate curiosity and awareness that you're there. Grant Cardone says the biggest number one failure to all businesses is the problem of obscurity. People don't know you exist. Okay. So it's not that my product isn't good enough. It's not that I'm not making enough sales to stay afloat. It's the fact that you can't generate any of those things because not enough people on a wide enough scale know about you. And so you not only have to have a good product or service, but you have to have eyeballs on that. You could have the best podcast in America, but if you don't have enough eyeballs on your podcast, you're never going to be a millionaire. And the reverse is true. I know people that have over 1 million followers on Instagram and their value they're delivering is poor. They're still not making any money because they have a huge audience base, but there's no real value, so they can't make any money either. So if you follow Ty Lopez's stuff as well, he talks about how you have to have, value that you're giving out, but you also have to have the eyeballs. And so the two together equals the money. So that's kind of how that plays out.
When you first started to crack the code and figure this out, clearly things took off, like a hockey stick. If you're thinking of like a profit curve, they took off for you pretty quickly. When did you first realize that you were really on to something? Like, when did it click?
I think for me, it was that moment. Probably the first aha moment was when I was like, wow, man, I'm growing 10,000 followers per month. And when I say it to people, they're like, you could just see the eyes. They're like, what? And so at that moment, I knew other people weren't doing that. I was like, oh, so you're not doing the same thing. And I'm talking about, I'm reaching out to people who to me perceive like they may have 100,000 followers, but I'm realizing their growth rate isn't what my growth rate currently is, although I'm smaller. And so it was the first idea that, wow, I'm doing something other people aren't doing. And then number two, the second one, which is initially when I went and said, you know what, there's enough value to create an LLC here and to go get a trademark, was when I went back to that community group and was like, wow, in 6 months, basically kind of part-timing this, I have over 100 people already in this group who, obviously want to work with me. And so I think that was the two key moments for me.
So you, at that point, you were doing the part-time agency, and then you're still doing your baseball stuff. When you decided to go full-time into the agency, how did things change?
So it just come down from a time standpoint. What was the biggest thing, and I had mentors before who had always told me, this thing's never going to take off or scale as fast as you want it to if you're one leg in, one leg out. And I know it's tough for a lot of entrepreneurs to kind of step out, on that branch and take that leap of faith, because they have this false sense of security of drawing a paycheck from their business. And to me, I had a little bit different mindset with all of that, So let me give you an example. If I was like, hey, Mom, why don't you become an entrepreneur? You talked about running this business for the last 2 years. Why don't you do that? Well, the common answer you get from most people is, I can't just quit my job and I get paid, every 2 weeks or the first of every month, and I depend on that. Well, the reality is we know, even though my mom's been teaching for 30 years, she is still relying on a board of directors at that school system to keep her and renew her contract every year. Most people don't know this, but as educators, your contract has to be renewed on a yearly basis. So what happens one year when they say, you know what, you know, Tommy Ruth, which is my mother, we're not having her back this year. So we've put all our eggs into this basket. And the reality is we're very dependent on another entity or a group of individuals or one person who holds the key to everything, our whole livelihood. Whereas for me, I'm like, you know what? I'm a little different in the sense that I'm not going to depend on someone else to basically be able to put food on the table for my family. My mindset is, and has been for forever, I trust and I'm confident in me to go out and deliver that for my family. I'm going to put that in my hands, not someone else's hands. It was kind of the old analogy my father used to say, after a strikeout in baseball, he would say, well, if you're sitting there with 2 strikes in the box, do you trust yourself more with the bat in your hands or the guy standing behind the catcher? It's that simple. Who are you going to trust more? And I started to kind of pick up on this about 12 years old. I was like, you know what? I trust me with a bat in my hand with 2 strikes more so than I dictate on him missing ball or strike or calling that a ball. Because, if he goes the other way on a 50-50, guess what? You're going back to the dugout. It doesn't matter what you say. So I started to kind of develop this sense of, I'm going to basically take my life into my own hands to produce results and not rely on a company to provide it for me. Completely different mindset. And so then when you have that mindset, I see people talking about having a steady paycheck coming in as a false sense of security, because that could be pulled out from underneath you like that. There's mergers in corporate America that happen every single day, and that guy who worked there for 40 years got laid off and he lost his pension. Happens all the time. And it's just crazy because people continually tell me they won't go build something themselves because of that paycheck. And I'm just like, dude, it's a totally different way of thinking. I can't relate to that. So it's tough for me.
As you now are growing your business and you scaled to a 7-figure business, what were some of those levers that you pulled to most effectively get to that 7-figure point?
For me, hands down, it was networking. It was this idea of, I got to get outside of my comfort zone and go connect with people who are already doing or at least sharing in the same thought process that I am. The biggest number one game changer for me was, so if you don't know the business model, let me kind of, before I go into that, let me kind of explain how I did it so fast. But a lot of people don't realize this, but they think that we're a huge company in Atlanta with like 100 employees because we manage 600 clients. The reality is you have myself, which for the first year did everything 100% by myself. I had no employees. To this day, I have 2 assistants. So my entire operation runs with me and 2 assistants. And the way that I was able to do that is, obviously, we go and I have to hire freelancers on a lot of different things. We outsource projects, but the reality is I don't need a full 30, 40 people every day in the business on payroll. I just don't, to fulfill the business. And so because the model was, back in the early 80s, 90s, their marketing agencies have been around, billboards, TV, radio ads. So there are companies that had 50 to 100 to 200 to 500 clients already established before social media became a big thing, before the 04, 05 Facebook kind of launch, if you will. So, and especially before social media marketing became a thing. But I understood, if I can go to those companies already established, and get them to see value in what I'm doing and just add me to their pitch deck and just white label me. That would, and I get immediate access to the 50 to 100 clients they already have versus the amount of time it would take me to go out on my own in the community every day, scheduling calls to be able to go and get and replicate the same 50 to 100 clients. So I said, we're not going to go this route. Let's go this route. And so that's what I did. And so I started to label where are these major agencies who have young enough people basically who I think I can give enough value to, who think like I do, who will see that social media marketing is going to be a big player in the next 5 to 10 to 15, 20 years. And I can convince to white label and resell. And so, went to West Palm Beach, Florida, went to Detroit, Michigan, LA, New York, have one in Vancouver, Canada. We have one in Australia. And that's the beautiful thing about technology is, talking to people in Australia, we can get on a Zoom call and I can talk to, the CEO or a decision maker on the computer. I don't necessarily have to go there. But in essence, it's, you take a test account, you show them what we could do for 30 days. They love it. They add us to our pitch deck. They start white labeling because here's the reality. They want to offer the same value that you're offering to their clientele to increase value for their existing client base. And so it was a win-win-win for everyone. Their client now gets exposure to social media marketing, can start growing online. They make money and have improved the value add to their clients. And then I get to make a percentage, monthly recurring, by the way, on everything that they already have went out and built themselves. And so I now went and started building partner agencies who are white labeling and reselling social revelation stuff. So you can kind of think of it as, hey, here's the umbrella. All these companies are underneath that umbrella. And the beautiful thing about this is they're hiring their own sales team already to go out and sell in the community. I don't have to hire the sales force, so I don't have the overhead. And so, but all 9 partner firms, have all these people out in the community selling. Well, when they go to fulfill, all the traffic flow every single day is coming to one central spot. So now when you think about it, I only need a couple people to help fulfill that. They just focus on the supply side, to take care of the fulfillment, and everything flows. I don't have to be out trying to sell. Now, the reality is I still have like a certain part of my schedule, couple hours a day, where people can book calls with me as a CEO and buy from me directly. We do sell our own stuff because margins, it comes from a margins. Our margins are better when we sell our own stuff. So we do have that aspect, but the reality is if I didn't want to work for the next 2 weeks, prime example, just went to my honeymoon, right? I didn't do any calls over the course of my honeymoon. And when I came back, we had added and saw about a 15 to 20% increase in monthly recurring income passively because of what everyone else was doing, and we're just fulfilling. So that's the model. So when you go back to how it all started, what was the single most important factor? 100% it's networking and creating that very first partner deal, is getting that very first business partner on board to buy into our vision. And that was instrumental, because the moment I got that yes and I got the first real paycheck in my hand, I was like, holy cow, this can be, that was when I started to see, what we could be doing in 2 to 3 years. And now let's just go replicate this. So really it was just the very first one was crazy, man. I still remember the feeling. I remember the day. I'm still best friends with those partners. Matter of fact, they flew in from, what's the coolest part about our wedding on March the 9th was in one building, I had like 8 different business partner CEOs from all over the country in one building at one time, and they all flew in for our wedding. So that was super cool because we've all become very good friends.
That's incredible. And that's a brilliant business model. It seems like what you're doing is you're building the value, and then you're building the relationships with other people who have built-in networks to distribute that value for you. They get a win because they get to add more value to their networks. You get a win because you get to add value to these key players. So it's almost like you're leveraging influencers to sell your own stuff, and everybody wins. Is that kind of the idea?
Exactly. And that's the beautiful thing, is these people can still sell it as their own brand. You know what I mean? And so, because here's the reality. And this is my person. And again, if you get value from this, great. But like my mindset, and people that I talk to are like, dude, you did that perfectly in the beginning. I don't have any ties to social revelation, because here's the reality. Like, I spent more on Ryan White as a person, as a personal brand, versus social revelation. Now we have social revelation, but the reality is people that come to social revelation come to Ryan White first through my 500,000 in audience to the business. So that in 5 to 10 years, when I sell this company for, you know, a 10 million plus deal, and I transition into the new thing, I haven't lost anything from my brand. It's kind of like, you know, a lot of people know who Amazon is, you know, Amazon.com, but they don't, most people that I talk to, at least down here where I'm at in the kind of the shut off part of the world, right? People that live under a rock, they don't know who Jeff Bezos is, the founder of Amazon. And so my whole mindset is, you know, I'm going to focus on me so that if I sell the company, I transition and my crowd comes with me to the next thing. And so that was kind of my mindset then. I want to build social revelation in this massive thing. If I sell it, then people are like, who is Ryan White? And now I got to go restart and build something else from scratch. So if that's kind of my positioning on things.
How did you articulate this idea? Like, where did the idea come from to go about doing it this way?
I think it was the first opportunity. I got lucky in the sense that, or lucky, blessed, whatever word you want to throw in there, but I met a guy. So that before I started all this, I used to play around with Instagram back in, you know, a few years before I actually started the social media marketing for the baseball company. And I connected with an individual who's a good friend of mine still today. He actually is the same guy who I built my Instagram mastery course with. And so anyway, I had my first kind of impression with him. We hit it off well. We did a little bit of business, small stuff. Well, then I kind of got out of it and I went and I started the baseball thing. Well, as it would have, you know, he was starting and partnering with another individual who was starting like a digital marketing agency that's kind of a little more well-rounded. You know, they offer website services, Facebook stuff. You know, they could do some digital PR, and then they had a social media Instagram element to it, but they were very well-rounded. Whereas when I launched my company, it was very Instagram specific. It was built around Instagram. And so when I launched my company, again, Telegram's kind of like the black market, if you will, of like anything social media that you want done. And so I had the best man at my wedding, he was going in and kind of doing ad placements for me in this group. Well, again, going back to my friend who I'd met years before, 2 to 3 years before, was in those same groups, and he saw an ad and they connected and they wanted to do business, but he didn't know it was me. So then my buddy comes back and says, hey, I got this guy who's interested in your services, who wants to get a little bit more information. And when he told me the name and I punched it in, I was like, you mean this guy? And he had already saved it in my phone from 2 years ago. So it was like, it was almost fate, or it was, you know, God's hand in the plan for us. But what was crazy was, you know, I reached back out and said, hey man, you know, it's Ryan. You remember me from 2 years ago? He was like, yeah, dude. Oh my gosh. I can't believe, you know, that this is happening. Like, this is you. And anyway, he was like, I told him what I had going on. He told me his situation. He was like, dude, we're kind of starting this thing over here. He's like, I want to get you in touch with my business partner. And we did like this FaceTime 3-way call just to see, dude. And we were all like immediately brothers, dude. Same mindset, same values. They're all Christians as well, like great people. If I had, you know, a sister, they would be the type of individual I would want my sister to marry. So like just good people, man. And, you know, their fiancés, soon to be wives, are literally best friends with my wife. And dude, it's just a good vibe. And so they were located in Detroit at the time. And so that was the first partner that I went up to, was Detroit, Michigan, man. And stayed up there like for the week with them. And just, that was like the very first pivotal moment of my company, you know, and they know this. Well, I've told them, you know, that it was cool how this all got started, and now we're like all killing it together. But, you know, it just goes back to say that, you know, you never know, because, you know, in entrepreneurship, it's funny, man. You know, you could even, I know I had a lot faster trend up than most people, but the cool thing is you could be, you know, literally living paycheck to paycheck or just flat broke in entrepreneurship for 4 years, but then you're a 5-year millionaire, like overnight. And that's what's crazy about it. And so consistency and just having vision is everything.
So we've talked a lot about how you've gotten to where you are now, right? But I would really like to take maybe a minute or two to really hear about all the things you're doing right now. Like, you know, really brag on yourself for a little bit and share with us, like, how high up the mountain have you really climbed at this point?
So kind of where I'm at right now is, we manage a little over 600 clients. I have 10 partner firms around the world. It's pretty crazy because just residually, passively, we have over $60,000 a month coming in just passively. So that's not extracurriculars, one-time stuff, just on a passive basis, $60,000 a month. I've went out. I drive a BMW i8. It's a $145,000 car, so that's pretty cool. I've moved from small town, which it was kind of stepping stones, right? I went from Lakeland, Georgia to Warner Robins, which was where I was living when I was doing the baseball stuff. It has about 100,000 people. To now I've kind of upgraded, if you will, I'm in Buckhead, Atlanta. So Atlanta obviously is a way bigger area. In terms of kind of what we've been able to do business-wise, we're not just Instagram focused anymore. We can do things on Facebook. So if people are looking to grow their Facebook, we can fulfill that. We can basically get people digital PR. So me personally, I write for Forbes, business.com. I can get people featured in Inc., Entrepreneur. I write for Future Sharks, BuzzFeed, Medium.com. There's like 12 major publications that I contribute for. And so it's pretty cool because I think when you go back and, you mentioned some of them at the beginning, but I started really focusing on like media outlets and getting my name out there in like October 2018. Well, since October 2018 to today, I've done over 50 media shows, and two of those included live television appearances. So, I got to go on Park City TV, the Mountain Morning Show live. I've been on Good Morning LA out in West Hollywood. And so it's just pretty cool. And now people are approaching me. I have my first speaking event here in Atlanta this summer. And so that's kind of the next thing is they're like, man, you've just, we want to move you into speaking so that you can travel around the world and provide and motivate and inspire. Because it's cool, man. I try to be as humble as possible always. And it's more about giving back to people and helping them go out and do, the same thing kind of that I did and just live a life that they're truly, happy with. And so, a lot of people ask me after that, they're like, have you ever considered like, doing some motivational speaking type stuff? So that's kind of in the mindset of, if you truly do care about that, well, why wouldn't I want to touch more lives? And so, getting on stage is an easy way and going around and speaking is an easy way to do that, to touch more people's lives. So I think moving forward, I'm gonna do some public speaking gigs late 2019. Like I said, it all starts this summer, so super stoked about that. It's one thing to do a podcast and do, a TV show was a little bit more kind of out of my comfort zone. Getting on stage, I'm going to have to fight that same fear, that everyone else does. Eventually it'll be like these podcasts and it's like riding a bike. But oddly enough, man, my second podcast ever was Entrepreneurs on Fire. And when I realized like the audience base of that, I was like, are you serious? But I had never like been interviewed before. And so I really had to do research and spend time on who am I and what is my story. I had to get real clear on what my story was. Because if you don't know your story well, you as an interviewer, when it's unscripted like this, if you ask something, I'm just like, you can tell people who genuinely don't fully or have reflected long enough to know their story. And so anyway, all in all, it's pretty wild to think about, March 2017, dude, I was working a standard 9-to-5 job. I was probably making 50, 60 grand a year. And, I had 1,300 followers and audience. And, now, I've been featured in Forbes like 4 times. I've been in business.com, Inc., Entrepreneur, Future Sharks. And what's cool about it is I've cultivated 500,000 across various platforms. And I've been able to work with brands, dude, like Major League Baseball, the Black Tux, NeuroGum. And as of like last month, so February, I actually got verified on Facebook and Instagram. So that's kind of my timeline in 2 years.
That's awesome. That is fantastic, man.
Been cool.
And,
it's been cool.
Congratulations on all the amazing things, especially getting married so recently and coming back from your honeymoon.
Yes, man. It was beautiful. I know a lot of people say that everything changes when you get married, but my mom asked me and our officiant who married us, and they're like, "Hey, man, how are you?" I'm like, "Dude, everything's great." Literally, in my opinion, this is the guy version. I'm sure she may tell you otherwise, but nothing's changed, man. I married my best friend, so everything's good, man. Life's great.
So we've talked about the business side a lot, but parallel to that, what else has been happening in your personal life this whole time?
Yeah, so for me, it was again, I was cultivating a relationship. March was 3 years. With that, we spent time. I mean, early on, it was, like most people, because the longest relationship I ever had in my life was 3 years, and we just hit that. Now I'm married. But, it's just funny because relationships is a totally different thing. Growing up in the whole baseball world, you're around locker room talk all the time. And so you don't really, and at least while I was playing, a lot of the people don't have this lifelong, like, marriage concept, or at least not in that your early 20s, late teen mindset. And so it's been pretty cool since I've met her, how much she's changed my mindset into more of a best friend, and just really not wanting to experience life and travel without that person. And what's super cool, man, is she comes from a family who travels around a lot. I come from a family who, I think my parents, man, may have been to Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, but that's about it. And so I kind of got thrown into that naturally growing up. I mean, we traveled around the Southeast playing ball, but it wasn't like we were getting on planes and going to play ball. And so what's super cool is she's opened me up to traveling. We've been, I think I've been to a total of almost 20 out of the 50 states now since I've met her in 3 years, if that tells you anything. So, and then, yeah, I mean, if there's anything else specific that you want to know, feel free to fire away. But honestly, man, just in the business side and then the relational side, I mean, my social revelation and Nadia, which is now changing the last name to White, which is super cool, have been the highlight of both of those areas.
One of the things that I'm fascinated by is connection. Connection between people. And I'm really interested, being a social media marketer, all those followers on Instagram. I mean, they're people and you're connecting with those people. So I'm really interested to hear your philosophy on developing deep, meaningful, and genuine human connection.
For sure. So I think, anytime you're putting out content, I try to divide my columns on Instagram into various categories. So for instance, it's not all, I had a guy reach out to me the other day. He wanted to create video stuff for me, content wise. And, of course, typical most video guys, they charge you $2,500 a month. And it's like every video is like a Gary V type, value driven, 100% type video. And I don't necessarily, I told him, I'm like, hey man, I'm not interested in every one of my posts being something like an interview recap. Now that's great. I feel like I need that element on one of my columns, which is why I've, dedicated one of my columns on Instagram to shows recaps so that you can get value. But my other two columns need to be broken up into something totally different. And I've told him that. I'm like, dude, I want to have a personal column. I want people to be able to learn from me as an individual and connect with me and see what is Ryan and Nadia doing on the weekend. What is his family life like? What does he find interest in? And what does he like to do? And so, for me, it's, I have like a business column. I have a personal column that I kind of post about myself, business, professional shots. And then if I get a new article, I may post that. But then my last column is literally personal. It's me and Nadia. It's where do we go? And it's recapping trips. It's showing you stuff about going to Bora Bora. And then, again, I try to post stories as well, because I feel like that's a very easy way to give a behind the scenes look onto what it is that we do every day. Like I feel like, and this is something I do when I consult people, is, if you run a company or you sell a product, maybe, you give them a behind the scenes look into that process, that assembly line, that fulfillment process. And so, or maybe you as a CEO just talk about your morning and how it went or what you're doing this weekend. And because again, humans thrive on connection. That's a fact. That's not something that we made up. We all want to connect with individuals on a personal level, on a deep level. And so I feel like for me as well, when people reach out, I've read every single DM, by the way, in my inbox, which is crazy because again, in my work schedule each day, I have a certain time slot allocated for that purpose. And so, if you send me something, the reality is I'm going to read it. Now, do I respond to everything? No, because out of 100 DMs per day, I get some crazy things that it's just not worth my time. So I have to be efficient with my time. But one thing that I do try to do to provide value is I pick at least 3 individuals a day who literally didn't just say, hey, what's up, bro? Can you help me or shout me out? I don't respond to that stuff. But if you genuinely tell me a story about how you overcame adversity and are doing something in your life, If you take time to basically show me value, said, hey man, I read this article, I really like X, Y, and Z, and would you be interested in throwing me out a couple tips here? I pick 3 and I respond to them every single day. Okay. It's also how I was able to notice, my Facebook DMs. I think, you DM me is how you reached out. Well, again, if I didn't do that stuff though, you see what I'm saying? This interview wouldn't even be taking place right now. And so I do try to come from a position of no matter where you're at in life, you don't always have to be above me, equal with me. No matter where you are, you could be, on the side of the street. But if you DM me and you provide me value and you're one of those 3 people I pick, you will get a response from me because I do try to genuinely add value to people's life.
What is your greatest theory?
My greatest theory. I think that's a good question. Let's see. I do have a theory. I was talking to you or listening in on your last podcast episode. I do have a theory that I think the virtual headsets and the virtual reality, as far as because here's the reality, I work from home. My team, my 2 assistants also work from home, and so I do think, because it could, matter of fact, when you said it, I started reflecting on it, and I was like, man, could that really be a thing? Because that would be super cool. Because I work from home, like I work remotely. But yeah, I think now after recapping, I think the virtual reality, man, and actually being in a conference room and being able to connect that way from a remote business, I have a theory that that's going to play out probably within the next 10 years. Now that I think about it.
So just to be crystal clear on exactly what you're talking about, are you talking about the theory of being able to put on like a headset or plug in or whatever and getting into like a virtual conference room where
Yes.
you have somebody in Asia, in Australia, in the US, in Canada, and everybody's like sitting in a virtual conference room as if they were like in an office space?
Yes, that is 100% what I'm talking about. Because, and I don't know if you've ever put on one of the virtual reality headsets, but if you can put me somewhat in a roller coaster cart and I can go through this made up jungle, why in the world can you not put me in a seat that's sitting still with my head turning, talking to someone else? So I definitely think that's something that's going to play out in the near future. And I actually think that it's super cool. And I guarantee you, there's probably someone out there that if they heard this, they'd go, dude, we're already working on it. Like, it's in development. Like, why would it not be? You know what I mean? Because business literally drives everything that we do on planet Earth. So that's at the forefront of like technology and where it's going.
That's awesome. Well, Ryan, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing this time with me. It's truly been a pleasure and an honor, and I want to thank you very much for that.
I appreciate you for having me, man. I was stoked to basically get on here and do the interview with you, and I know we'll collaborate again in the future.
Absolutely. So I got 2 more quick questions for you,
Okay.
then we'll wrap it on up. The first is there anything about yourself that you think is an important part of who you are that I didn't ask you about today? In other words, what did I miss?
I think you pretty much crushed it. I mean, me in a nutshell, I'm a competitive guy. I like to kind of associate with people who kind of share the same morals and values that I do, whether it be friendships or in business. Obviously, I value, marriage, and family. I'm raised in the South, so probably a lot of the things you've heard about Southern people, from Southern hospitality to the way that we do business, it's probably accurate. If you can't hear it from my Southern accent, I'm pretty much, born and bred, man, here in the South in Georgia. So, I think that most people, when they meet me, I mean, probably the biggest compliment that I've gotten, which kind of makes me humbled to say, is just, people can genuinely care, or see that I actually care about people and their success, and I do want to help them. So, and that's a fact. So I always like to reiterate that.
Last question for you. I'm 24. I have a couple different businesses. This show is absolutely my greatest passion. Knowing that, what question should I be asking you that I just wouldn't think to ask?
Probably, and you may do this outside of this, but based on my specific strategy and the expertise that I know, there's probably a couple of things that are related to growing an audience base and take solid takeaways on how to build your online presence bigger, faster, reach more people, have more influence with your show that you probably have just never thought about because you don't dwell and live in this specific space every day, the social media and the digital PR, that I could go, dude, if you would ask me that, I could literally, and the whole, I say that to say you don't even need to, because if we just got into a conversation, you were like, hey man, how can I do more? I'm already going to take it as if you asked me those questions, and I'm going to deliver you that value anyway. So when we get off here, like if you want to kind of mastermind a little bit about your specific situation, we can kind of talk about that. But yeah, man, looking at someone like you at 24, you know, you got the whole world in front of you, your whole life in front of you. I know for sure, man, you could do major, major things and touch a ton of lives and add value to so many people with this podcast and this show. So.
Well, thank you again, Ryan, and to everybody who is listening, watching. Y'all are the best. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for supporting the show, sticking with us all the way till the end here. You guys are the best. Y'all rock. So thank you very much for that. Ryan, do you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, for sure. I'll just say, obviously, places to connect with me because I love connecting with people. You know, I have a personal website. It's just officialryanwhite.com. Probably the quickest way to get in touch with me is either through email. You know, you can just shoot my staff an email at staff@officialryanwhite.com. They'll make sure I get it. Or you can just go directly to Instagram, which is my bread and butter, right? It's my expertise. So my Instagram username there is just at Ryan White. And I'll kind of leave you with one final thought, you know, and that's just, you know, if you're thinking about entrepreneurship, I would just say it's changed my life. Definitely, you know, jump into it, take that leap of faith. And, you know, again, it all comes down to me for, you know, it's just, you got to learn how to manufacture momentum. You know, I tell people all the time using an analogy, you know, there's a snowball sitting on top of the mountain. That thing just needs one initial push to get it rolling down the mountain. And what you'll find out is that thing gains momentum naturally as it's going down. What's going to happen is you're going to look back in 6 months and you're going to see how far you've came, and you're going to be glad that you actually took time and invested in yourself to go and give that snowball that initial push.
That's huge. That's huge. So thank you so much again, Ryan. And to everybody who's listening, this has been another Project Egg interview. Come back next time and we will dive right back into it. So I'll see you next time.
See you guys.